To figure out what it all means, we are joined in studio by I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev. Tal, good morning to you. By Middle East analyst, Times of Israel, and Wala Avi Sakharov.
Good
morning to you. And of course, by the director of the Arms Control and Regional Security Program at the INSS, Dr. Emily Landau. Dr. Landau, good morning to you. Before we break this down, let's take a look at the following report that recaps the dramatic night without an outcome, sadly, as of yet. The fact that, the French have walked out on the level, and Emily, I think, turns to you, they've walked out on the level of talks that we're looking at right now. And we're assuming, we don't know, everything is all rumor and supposition, is the sticking points that remain, which you are still bothered by. You were still very bothered by. And that was something that we discussed several days ago. It's where certain of this energy is going to go to. Is some of it going to be shipped to Russia, yes or no? From what we know that's on the table right now, just to recap again, why is this such a bad deal?
Well, I would like to know what has been agreed. Okay, what has been agreed? The only thing that we thought was perhaps on its way to some kind of understanding was this issue of shipping out the stockpiles. Now the Iranians have backed away from that. And then we hear from the Americans that they didn't back away from it because there was never really an agreement on that. I mean, look, the information coming out and the messages that are coming out and being fed to the media are, contradictory, partial, obviously, not giving us really any sense of any progress that has been made. All we hear is we've made tremendous progress, but we still have issues at dispute. All I see are the issues at dispute. And I'm wondering whether the French and Germans were not trying to signal to the Americans, look, we have been in this last stretch up till this deadline for a week now. We've been discussing these issues. We just keep turning them around and around and around, and we're not getting anywhere. Either we get somewhere or we say that this isn't working. And the Americans are projecting a sense that they are not going to walk away from that table until they get something. And that something might be anything. And that anything might be just a declaration. The Iranians have been saying they don't want anything signed. Surprise, surprise. They don't want anything signed. I mean, we have problems with the Iranians' interpretations over things that have been agreed and are in written agreements. So now they want something that's just a declaration where it's clear that it's an open field for different interpretations and different understandings, and the Iranians will say, no, we didn't really agree to that, or that wasn't what our understanding was. I think that it's becoming close to being like a theater of the absurd. They have been at this negotiation for so long. The issues are well known, right? I mean, we're told always that these are esoteric technical issues that we understand the issues. We know what's on the agenda. What we're looking for is I'm saying analysts that are trying to understand this process, any indication of anything that has been agreed to. What we hear at the level of the rhetoric is from Iran from day one of this round, which began on the 20th of January 2014. What we hear is no, no, no. That's the dominant message from Iran, aside from these laconic statements of we've made progress, but progress on what? What is Iran really willing to do? So the sticking points seem to be all over the place. Every time we hear different sticking points, and we don't hear any resolution of the previous sticking points. So it's the stockpiles, and it's the facilities, and it's Fordo, and it's Arak, and it's weaponization, and it's verification mechanisms. We don't know what's going on with any of that, and my sense is that nothing good is going on with any of the issues.
I mean, it is a clear point that, we don't know all the sticking details, but so much is at play, and I think so much more that we're trying to figure out in terms of rumor and supposition. And I think it's also the Arab world that's looking around at us right now. Avi Sakharov, clearly I'm going to you with this. There's something that, yesterday, many people brought up the question that it's slightly bizarre that these negotiations are going on right now in Lausanne. And meanwhile, in the Arab world, it's like, the Western world is sitting with good Iran, so to speak. Meanwhile, in the Arab world, Yemen, the Western world has sanctioned or okayed Saudi to go in and help protect it from Iranian proxies. what is the Arab world looking at and when it comes to the stakes in these talks? And is it true that the people around believe that the United States has picked Iran as the next big player and is trying to create that type of a scenario?
I think that they're astonished, that the Arab world is astonished by the American policy or non-policy regarding the Middle East and regarding the nuclear projects of Iran. I think that when you look at it, you cannot be either then astonished, because you look at President Obama, and from time to time I close my eyes and I imagine this, someone calls Barack Obama, run Barack, run to the nuclear agreement, as if there's nothing else that you can do. I think that there were some other pressure points that President Obama and the U.S. administration could have pushed the Iranians. We had the golden chance, the golden opportunity right now to push the Iranians because of the internal problems, because of the economy. They didn't do it.
You're talking about more sanctions.
Yes, but they didn't do it at the end of the day. Now, the Arab world, yes, it's completely confused. Why? Because at the same time that they are dealing with the Iranians, they're letting this war in Yemen. The same time that they are dealing with the Iranians.
When Sisi comes out in Sharm el-Sheikh and says, there's going to be also this Arab joint force, is that not also some type of a statement that's directed towards Iran in some ways?
Of course it is. Of course. I think that, yes, for the meanwhile, it's focusing in Yemen, yes. But the declaration that the Arab League decided upon is saying that in any future conflict in which one of the Arab countries, any Arab country, will demand the Arab League to intervene, they will do it. Meaning, what they're doing right now, forming this joint forces of the Arab League, they're preparing themselves for the next war to come, and this will be against Iran. Now, 2 days ago, there were Iranian ships shooting at Egyptian ships. This is not just a coincidence. This is not just happening by a chance. I think that we're at the eve of a bigger war than the one that we had seen in the Middle East between the Shiites and the Sunnis for the last couple of months in Syria, now in Yemen. I think that the next one is in line.
The next one is in line, but staying with this agreement, because I think it trickles to anywhere and everywhere. And Rebecca, you did mention that, the rolling of the eyes, but as Avi Sahav said, there is a feeling, as did Emily, that the American president seems to be, going for it, going for that agreement. That said, he said he's not going to take it to Congress. Can he even do that when such a big agreement or such a big issue is on the table? Can he even pass something like that? And how can he even explain not taking it to Congress? I mean, that's not going to fly, I'm assuming, on a certain constitutional level, even though he has the power to do it.
Well, the short answer is, actually, to paraphrase Obama, yes, he can. He can without, oh good, at least we're laughing in the morning, that's a good start. Yes, he can. He can bypass Congress. It is debatedly within his constitutional rights.
But that's like breaking the dishes, isn't it? I mean, we say in the Middle East, or we say in Israel, that would be breaking the dishes entirely.
It would be, although he would argue that it wouldn't be. And this becomes the question, is the question of what precedent are we arguing about? So obviously the people in Congress who really want to see some sort of an up and down vote on an agreement say, well, actually, yes, the president does have, executive autonomy, more or less in foreign policy. However, on nuclear agreements, and this is undoubtedly a nuclear agreement, Congress has traditionally weighed in. And that becomes the sticky point, is the word is traditionally, it's not chartered. Now, on top of that, and I think that this is a very, very important point, even if Congress were going to somehow get itself a way to weigh in, it's not happening today. Now, the good news is that this agreement is also probably
not happening today.
Is either not going to happen today, or whatever does come out today will not be particularly robust in terms of assessing commitments. However, when we look forward toward June, if that agreement actually happens on time, then we begin to see an agreement that Congress would want to get an up and down vote on it. And that's where the real political kind of gamesmanship will come in just in time for summer.
No, which it's exactly, as you mentioned, but, there's also a guest arriving in Israel today, and that's John Boehner. And I'm assuming that it's this political play. But what can he do with Prime Minister Netanyahu other than a photo op that shows clearly that here I am with my best friend in the Middle East? can we expect statements that will say this is what we're going to do, or is this timed exactly to these talks?
Well, as Rebecca just said, the practical options are not on the table too much. There are not too many practical options on the table, but it will be a signal. I mean, the symbol of Netanyahu today with John Boehner, while if or not there is a joint declaration in Lausanne, is a very strong symbol, and maybe Netanyahu will say this is proof that what I did was wrong. This is proof that the whole, you can look at it in any ways. What was the Congress speech worth? Was it worth it? Did it stop the deal? It didn't stop the deal. Did it influence the deal? And it hasn't influenced the deal at the moment. Will it influence the deal in the future? If now John Kerry comes back and shows the Congress a very weak agreement, as it seems, a very weak declaration, even if it's accompanied by detailed documents, as one of the reports said, the important thing is what is not in those documents, what is not agreed upon yet, and Netanyahu's influence on Congress could definitely come into play in the upcoming weeks when Congress comes back from recess. And Netanyahu has met with Mitch McConnell this week. There are several delegations here of American lawmakers. Netanyahu is definitely putting all of his cards on this option.
But looking on, at the day after, Avi, if, it's already a destabilized, there's no argument about that, Israeli-American relationship, are the Americans risking their relationship with the Saudis? How far will the Saudis go if they see that something like that is on the way?
In a way, the Arabs, the Saudi Arabians, Egyptians, Jordanians, and etc., neglected the approach of being supported or being needed by the Americans. They don't depend upon the Americans anymore. They're not waiting for them. That's it. It's gone. Look what they're doing in Yemen. Look what they're doing in other places, like then again forming this joint armed forces. They don't want to wait for the U.S. administration to come to any kind of conclusions or decisions that will not have any effect in the Middle East. They understand that now it's the time for using power, for using military force in order to stop the Iranians on one hand and the Sunni radicals on the other hand.
In that respect, Netanyahu yesterday mentioned the word in his speech. He mentioned the word partnership with the moderate Arab countries. It's a word we do not hear very commonly, partnership. And in that respect, Netanyahu is the most vocal opposition. But definitely listen, when you hear Avi describe the Saudi position, then this is one that Israel definitely agrees upon, that they do not have to wait for it. They do not have to wait for the U.S. if we see what is happening in the region.
If we see what is happening in the region, but yes, Emily.
I just want to say something on the American situation. I think this is going to come down, to the wider debate on this issue, the wider public debate, and it's going to be very political. And I'm not sure the president is going to be able to sustain his position, which has been consistently marginalizing any criticism of this negotiation, of the emerging deal, of Congress, obviously, of Israel. In other words, when people look, in a very clear-headed manner at what's going on or what's not going on. And this issue of congressional review of any deal, I think, is going to be looking to more and more people as something that is totally legitimate and needs to be done. And going back to the impact of Obama's speech, no, it didn't have an impact on the negotiation. On Netanyahu's speech in Congress. It didn't have a direct impact on what is going on, but it did have an impact on the public debate. We saw it reflected in the media immediately the next day. When you see headlines saying, Obama, you need to answer Netanyahu's concerns in the Washington Post, that's a strong message. And I think people are hearing this, and I think something is going to turn. And if President Obama tries to, use his veto power at the crunch time in June, I think it's going to be very problematic, and it will be politically very difficult.
Yes, but it might push the president. It might have pushed the president into this corner of, no, I'm going all the way to reach an agreement, maybe also because of Netanyahu's
You know what?
speech.
He doesn't have to worry anymore about maybe his political future as president, but he does have to worry, I think, about the Democratic Party. I mean, there will be an election. There's a limit to how much you can push back, especially when people are watching this issue unfold, are seeing how these negotiations are playing out in such a not positive manner, let's say, and I think it is going to have an effect. The public debate will be part of this, and it will be a political issue. So going to the Constitution, going to pass arms control agreements, yes, but it's mainly going to be
no, and I think very true that it's going to have, and it's how much does he care about the Democratic Party? It's going to have an effect on 2016. But real quickly, Avi, from looking at the Middle East, it would, let's say these talks fail, okay, which is an outcome that many people in the Middle East would like to see. Let's say they don't work. What happens then the day after?
But again, by the way, this is very bad also. If the negotiations
completely
fail...
What is the day after? If negotiations fail, that's what I think we haven't touched on yet, then what is Iran willing to do to solidify its power or get its point across, so to speak?
Well, first of all, we have to mention that we're going back to the same point before the interim agreement of 2014, of January 2014, meaning they will be closer to a nuclear bomb. They're not going to get far and far. So with all the criticism upon this agreement, we need to understand that no agreement is also bad, even for the state of Israel.
Yeah.
But for the Arab countries, I must say that they will be relieved. In a way, they feel that someone needs to hit the Iranians, diplomatically, militarily, everything in order to stop them, in order to stop the progress in the Middle East. Look what's going on around us. They're taking over a state by a state by a state, and the Americans are not doing enough in order to stop them and to say enough is enough is enough.
And one word on failure, Yael, and this is important.
Failure
doesn't mean that it's over. Failure means we stop for now, the Iranians will come back to the table, and the P5+1 might be in a stronger bargaining position.
Yeah, but you're talking like a reasonable person, which is something that it's hard to expect in the Middle East, although let's hope they listen to you. Thank you all for being with us this